Welcome to the Hidden Truth Stories channel. Today, we're diving deep into an unexplored historical mystery. The silence that stretches over the high desert plateau of the American Southwest. A silence so vast it seems to absorb all sound and time, is where our story truly begins. A story of most unsolved mysteries that cannot be explained. Those stubborn knots in the fabric of reality that defy all logic and recorded history. And our guide into this swirling vortex of the unexplained is Dr. Alara Vance, a theoretical archaeologist whose specialty wasn't digging up potsherds, but tracing the persistent, resonant echoes left behind by cultures that shouldn't have existed or events that simply shouldn't have happened. Alara wasn't driven by tabloid headlines, but by the mathematical elegance of impossibility, holding a quiet, unwavering belief that if enough anomalies clustered together, they pointed not to individual mistakes, but to a vast, deliberately obscured truth, a hidden layer of the past we have collectively agreed to ignore. And her current fixation, the anchor dragging her deep into the ancient sands and red canyons of Arizona and New Mexico, was a cluster of three distinct, historically impossible phenomena that she termed the Trinity of non-existence. First, the recurring, non-native seismic signatures recorded by Deep Earth sensors across the region, patterns that mirrored advanced, subterranean tunneling equipment, active not in the 21st century, but consistently spiking in the geological record around 800 AD, long before the earliest known sophisticated mining or earth-moving technology existed in the Americas. Second, the undeniable presence of trace elements of an incredibly pure, non-terrestrial isotope of platinum, completely absent in natural local geology, found embedded deep within the mortar of certain ancient Puebloan cliff dwellings, structures that were already centuries old when the Europeans arrived. And finally, the baffling linguistic anomaly known as the Proto-Aztec echo, a phonetic and grammatical structure found occasionally within the oldest, most sacred oral traditions of the Hopi and Navajo nations, which, when analyzed by specialized AI pattern recognition software, showed a direct, identical match to a specific, unique form of highly ritualistic Nahuatl, a language spoken over 1,000 miles away in the Valley of Mexico. A linguistic cross-pollination that should have taken centuries and left countless traces, but instead appeared fully formed, like a ghost language whispered across an impossible distance. Alara's official funding came from the unassuming Institute for Archaic Linguistic Studies, a thinly veiled cover for a much deeper, more shadowy consortium of private historians and physicists who believed, as she did, that the unexplained mysteries were all interconnected, and her journey led her to a remote, abandoned observatory perched atop a mesa in Arizona, a site chosen not for its modern value, but for its proximity to the oldest, most powerful magnetic anomaly in the Southwest. A place where the Earth itself seemed to hum with an unnatural energy. She had convinced the consortium to let her establish a temporary base there, a high-tech needle in the historical haystack, hoping to triangulate the source of the 800 AD seismic spikes. And it was in the observatory's dusty, forgotten basement that she found her first real breakthrough. A forgotten maintenance logbook from the 1930s, written by a disillusioned astronomer who chronicled not celestial bodies, but strange, low-frequency electromagnetic pulses originating from deep within the Earth. Pulses he had meticulously charted before his abrupt, unexplained transfer and the subsequent closure of the observatory. The astronomer, a man named Silas Thorne, had included a hand-drawn map in the logbook, a crude but precise overlay of the seismic patterns and the magnetic anomaly. And at the convergence point, Silas had simply written one word: K-Antu. A quick linguistic search revealed K-Antu to be an ancient Quechua term, a language of the Andean highlands, meaning the flower of the mountain, or sometimes, that which is held back, a completely foreign term in the local desert vernacular, creating a fourth, impossible mystery. An Incan word thousands of miles from its origin, written by an American astronomer decades before modern communication could have easily facilitated such a transfer. Ilara felt the chill of deep time settle over her. The impossibility was now layered, a cake of historical contradictions that suggested a singular, unifying truth lay beneath it all. She spent weeks meticulously matching Silas Thorne's analog readings with her modern, digital data, running simulations that traced the subsurface vibrations, and the results were undeniable. The 800 AD seismic spikes originated exactly where Silas had marked K-Antu, deep beneath the ancient, volcanic caldera known locally as the Sleeping Serpent. This wasn't just ancient digging. The pattern suggested the creation of massive, perfectly circular subterranean chambers, connected by tunnels built with impossible speed and precision, and the total volume of displaced earth was astronomical. Yet there was no evidence of spoil piles or debris anywhere on the surface. The earth had simply been moved or perhaps dissolved. Ilara needed to find a local connection to the word K-Antu, a linguistic or mythical bridge that connected the Andes to the southwest desert. And this quest led her away from the sterile data and into the dusty libraries of the Navajo Nation, seeking out the oldest storytellers, the keepers of the unwritten lore. After months of patient, respectful inquiry, she finally met an elder named Senin, a woman whose eyes held the reflection of the ancient canyons. And Senin didn't use the word K-Antu, but she told a story passed down through 30 generations of the people of the Turning Stone who arrived not from the north or the south, but from below, riding on a light that eats the mountain. And when they left, they gave the ancestors a silent, shimmering stone that held the echo of the far place, a stone they were told to hide in the heart of the serpent. And the description of the shimmering stone matched, in chilling detail, the non-terrestrial platinum isotope Ilara had found in the cliff dwellings. The echo of the far place was the Proto-Aztec linguistic fragment, a piece of an incredibly distant language, preserved and transmitted over an impossible gulf. And the people of the Turning Stone were clearly the source of the 800 AD subterranean activity, the unexplained seismic spikes. The three impossible mysteries had just collapsed into a single, cohesive narrative that suggested intercontinental, subterranean travel by an unknown, technologically advanced, and historically erased group, using a method of transport that manipulated the Earth itself. And the final puzzle piece was the Incan word K-Antu, which Ilara now interpreted not as flower, but as a corrupted translation of the name of this hidden group's subterranean staging area, the held-back place of departure and arrival. The only way to prove this impossible story was to go where the earth had been eaten, to the heart of the Sleeping Serpent, the coordinates Thorne had marked K-Antu. The descent into the caldera was treacherous, requiring specialized mountaineering and rappelling gear, and Ilara chose to go alone, knowing the moment she radioed the consortium with her location, the delicate historical thread would be snapped by a flood of politics and control, and she rappelled down a sheer, black wall of volcanic rock until she reached the exact elevation marked by Thorne's readings, where the air pressure suddenly shifted, and she found it. A perfectly circular, unnervingly smooth opening, nearly 20 feet in diameter, seamlessly cut into the igneous rock, completely disguised by centuries of dust and wind erosion. but still mathematically precise. A tunnel mouth that looked less like something dug and more like a massive drill core. Inside, the air was cool, dry, and clean, carrying a faint, ozone-like scent, and the tunnels were vast, running straight and true for miles, illuminated by a dim, residual luminescence in the walls themselves, a silent testament to the light that eats the mountain. And she walked for what felt like hours, her footsteps echoing in the silence of an impossible highway, following the subtle magnetic signature of the platinum isotope, until the main tunnel opened into a monumental, spherical chamber. The K-Antu staging area. It was immense, a space large enough to house a small city, and in the center sat the object of the entire mystery. Not a machine, but a vessel, a colossal, dark obsidian sphere, perfectly smooth, resting on a pedestal carved from the living rock. The sphere pulsed, echoing the same rhythmic thrumming Alara had detected in the observatory's deep Earth readings, and the surrounding walls were not decorated, but covered in shimmering, embedded hieroglyphs, a vast, swirling mural of the history of the people of the Turning Stone. And they weren't extraterrestrial, as she might have initially guessed, but human, or at least, a pre-Ice Age variant of humanity, highly advanced, survivors of the catastrophic 12,000 BC Younger Dryas event, who hadn't fled the planet, but had retreated into it, creating a vast, global, subterranean network that connected long-lost civilizations, from the Andes to the Valley of Mexico to the American Southwest, using the planet's magnetic ley lines for power and propulsion, the very same ley lines that created the seismic spikes. The murals depicted them transporting knowledge and technology between their isolated underground pockets, trying to preserve the entirety of human development for a time when the surface world was stable enough to receive it. And the Chronos Key was their vehicle, the massive obsidian sphere, a subterranean transport system capable of utilizing dimensional folding to travel vast distances almost instantly, explaining the impossibility of the Proto-Aztec echo and the Incan K-Antu term appearing so far from their origins. They were simply the linguistic residue left by rapid, intentional travel between the underground hubs. As Alara stood there, feeling the deep, resonant pulse of the obsidian sphere, realizing she was standing at the nexus of the trinity of non-existence, the air in the chamber grew cold, and a figure materialized from the shadows near the pedestal, a man dressed in simple, timeless robes, his skin deeply tanned, his features indigenous and ancient, a face that held the profound calm of someone who had watched civilizations rise and fall. He introduced himself simply as Tonal, the current keeper of K-Antu, the living representative of the people of the Turning Stone. He was not surprised, but deeply, profoundly resigned to her presence. Tonal explained that the 76 terrifying secrets whispered in the old world were incomplete. They were fragments of a grander, more immediate truth kept by the keepers of the surface. But the most terrifying mystery of all, the one that defied all explanation, was the constant, self-destructive nature of surface humanity. And their society was an intentional, necessary secret, preserved below ground to avoid being corrupted by the cycles of war and ignorance that dominated the surface world. And they maintained the subterranean network, occasionally releasing nudges, a single piece of clean energy technology, a linguistic echo, a precise architectural technique, to try and lift the surface civilizations, but they always failed. The gifts turned into weapons or forgotten in the pursuit of temporary power. He told Alara that Silas Thorne, the astronomer from the 1930s, had been one of the few surface dwellers deemed worthy enough to be shown the truth, and he had marked the location, K-Antu, hoping that in a later, more enlightened time, someone would follow the thread. and Alara's arrival proved that the possibility of connection still existed, but Tonal was weary. The people of the Turning Stone were considering pulling back completely, severing the last links to the surface world, abandoning their self-imposed duty of preservation. Alara, looking at the monumental history captured in the murals and the impossible technology of the sphere, understood the gravity of their choice, and she realized the true, most terrifying unsolved mystery wasn't the existence of the subterranean network, but the persistent, enduring failure of surface humanity to be ready for its own history. She spent 3 days in the silent, immense chamber, not trying to steal technology or expose the secret, but simply talking to Tonal, understanding their philosophy of preservation and their deep sense of historical responsibility. And she realized that the greatest mystery wasn't what they were hiding, but why they still cared. Her final conversation with Tonal centered on the platinum isotope, the shimmering stone, which she now understood was a key, a harmonic resonant material capable of activating the sphere's dimensional engine. And she suggested a compromise, a final, definitive nudge. Not a technological secret, but an undeniable, non-violent event. She proposed that Tonal use the Chronos key, the sphere, to perform a controlled, localized temporal manipulation, not changing the past, but projecting a single, incontrovertible image of the pre-Ice Age predecessor civilization, projected simultaneously over every major capital city on Earth. A brief, stunning, non-damaging moment of historical impossibility that would shock the world out of its complacency, forcing every scientist, historian, and politician to confront the fact that they knew nothing, that the official story was a lie, and that the only way forward was global cooperation to understand the true depth of human history. Tonal, seeing the fire of truth in her eyes and acknowledging the futility of passive preservation, agreed. He gave her a single, smooth piece of platinum isotope, a key to a new reality, and told her to go. Alara ascended from the earth, no longer just a scholar, but a silent participant in the greatest, most terrifying unsolved mystery in human history. And she vanished from the public eye, becoming a ghost in the academic world. But weeks later, on a clear, still night, for exactly 60 seconds, every major population center on Earth saw the same inexplicable phenomenon. A shimmering, silent holographic projection of impossibly advanced, non-modernist structures, superimposed over their skylines, a collective historical hallucination that defied every known explanation, and the world was left reeling, confronted by the undeniable evidence of a past that simply could not exist. And the quiet, desperate search for the true history began, a search guided by the sudden, inexplicable knowledge that the answers lay not in the stars, but deep beneath their feet. Alara watches now, from the shadows, knowing the people of the Turning Stone are still there, waiting for the surface world to finally be ready for the full truth. This mysterious journey ends here, but stay tuned for more untold stories in our next video. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new stories. Thank you, and see you again.